In this video, we're going to be addressing manifesting that's currently been taking over the internet. From our regular subscribers, know that this generation has stumbled upon a mystical truth that you want to be aware of because it's become a pervasive sensation and a wildly popular cultural phenomenon within the youth. Priests, preachers, and exorcists will all tell you that there is real power and real force behind this manifesting craze, and that the concept of manifesting has been around and known for thousands of years, but has been kept within occult circles and texts, and is actually a form of sorcery that has become mainstream within the Western youth culture. So if you're just hearing about this, you should watch the whole video so you know about what your kids, grandkids, and your culture as a whole is doing. This is renowned exorcist Father Ripperger on witchcraft, magic, and sorcery.
Many people do not have contact with people who are involved with this stuff, but many others do. And you should be aware of these things so that you and your children do not fall into these things. Parents should strictly forbid their kids to be involved in these things.
Father Ripperger notes that we should be aware of these things so that you and your children do not fall into these things, and that parents should strictly forbid their kids to be involved with these things. The idea of manifesting became somewhat mainstream with the book and film The Secret, written in 2006. The main idea behind the book is that you can impose your will upon the universe and attract real-world events into your life and get anything you want simply by deciding what you want, believing that you can have it, believing that you deserve it, then close your eyes every day and visualize already having it, feeling the feelings of already having it. Coming out of that, focusing on what you are grateful for already, and really enjoy it, and trust that the universe will figure out how to manifest it. Some are inclined to say that there's no way that this can be real, and that being able to manifest is just a delusion.
Ooh, yeah. I'm gonna have to go ahead and sort of disagree with you there.
The film The Secret places a lot of emphasis on acquiring wealth and doing whatever you want. Popular manifesting beliefs outlined in the film are as follows. What happens in your life are a direct result of what you are feeling. A shift of your emotions can change your entire day and your life. The universe corresponds to the nature of your inner feeling. That most people offer the majority of their thought in response to what they are observing. Instead, the film says that we should feel the feelings of gratitude for everything in life. When you visualize, you materialize. If you're considering or are currently involved in any practice such as manifesting, law of attraction, Kabbalah, magic, witchcraft, or any popular New Age form of reality manipulation, it's great that you've stumbled across this video. Here, you'll learn a proper understanding of the scientific underpinnings, scientific theory, and also the extreme danger of this type of work.
It's science.
What many self-help gurus and life coaches won't tell you is that manifesting in and of itself carries inherent dangers and risks that cannot be overlooked and has the potential to manifest your worst nightmares and unconscious, deep-seated fears. Donald Michael Craig, the author of the book Modern Magic, which has sold thousands and thousands of copies, uses the analogy that you can use electricity to power a light bulb, but you can also use it to kill someone. However, Donald Craig does not seem to grasp the scientific theory, the quantum mechanics, or the actual laws behind the work he wrote about, and the potential to wreak havoc upon yourself and the community unintentionally and very easily. You'll find that when just dabbling in the process of discovering your ability to manifest reality, you can not only more effectively attract your desires and dreams, but you can also completely destroy your life in an instant and have no idea why. Not to mention that manifesting increases the potential for demonic obsession, oppression, and even possession.
Who are you? Your worst fear. I am your demise.
The main inspiration behind this video is to guide many curious practitioners away from self-destruction by allowing one to comprehend the scientific theory, the mechanics, and the risks of exactly what one is undertaking, and to expose manifesting for what it is. Dr. Fred Allen Wolf, an American theoretical physicist specializing in quantum physics and the relationship between physics and consciousness, says that thought can change the strength of a quantum wave. He notes, "The strength of a quantum wave is a measure of the probability of an event occurring. This is best understood and exemplified by the double slit experiment. This experiment essentially discovered that consciousness, or specifically quantum waves, alter the probability of real-world events."
60% of the time, it works every time.
That doesn't make sense.
The quantum wave function is a mathematical description of the quantum state. It is a complex valued probability amplitude and the probabilities for the possible results. When one actively engages in imposing one's will upon the universe, trying to make an event more probable, one must be aware that the probability amplitude does not move in just one direction. When one tries to make the probability of an event 100%, one risks encountering the law of exponential opposite probability, thereby making one's desired outcome a 0% probability in violent fashion. What do I mean by this? For example, if someone is manifesting and if the desired outcome requires the use of one's physical body to accomplish the desired outcome, an exponential opposite probability reaction can result in the opposite of what one intended. Instead of the probability of your manifesting or desire becoming 100%, it can also inadvertently become 0% just as easily, which colloquially is known as black magic. And that could include you becoming physically maimed or injured in an accident to make the probability of that event 0%. You are dabbling in probability amplitude, and no, it does not work in just one single direction. This happens regardless of your best intentions.
Oh, I'm sorry. Did I break your concentration? You were saying something about best intentions?
Moreover, one does not control the means of the probability outcome. For example, if one wishes to manifest a large sum of money without doing any actual work, one can become permanently injured or disabled in a wheelchair and receive a large settlement as a result. Consequently, there are inherent dangers and risks of imposing one's will upon the universe. This is detailed within occult texts and has been known within occult circles as black magic for millennia. We'll discuss black magic or exponential opposite probability more later in this video. Physicist Tom Campbell is excellent at explaining how the measurement problem in the double slit experiment shows that it takes human consciousness to make a particle out of probability. Mainstream quantum theory holds that you, as the experimenter, have to choose what to measure and you have to have your own reasons. Your observation is necessary, which is called a collapse in the state vector. The collapse cannot take place without an observer. Consequently, physicists are required to consider the role of consciousness. The Hungarian-American mathematician von Neumann's theory showed that mind and matter are actually separate, and quantum mechanically, the mind can't be the body because quantum theory requires the interplay between both the mental and physical dimensions. Physicist Fred Alan Wolf explains, classical physics holds that there is a real world out there, acting independently of human consciousness. Consciousness, in this view, is to be constructed from real objects such as neurons and molecules. It is a byproduct of the material causes which produce the many physical effects observed. Quantum physics indicates that this theory cannot be true. The effects of observation couple or enter into the real world whether we want them to or not. The choices made by an observer alter, in an unpredictable manner, the real physical events. Consciousness is deeply and inextricably involved in this picture, not a byproduct of materiality. You will learn that specific brainwave frequencies remarkably modify the strength of the quantum wave function, which in turn alters the probability of events occurring. Know that this is very real, and it is also very dangerous, and usually ends up causing more harm than good.
Idiot!
For context, Marie Curie's experiments with radioactivity and her discovery of radium eventually led to her own death. Robert Bunsen, famous for the Bunsen burner, blinded himself after a cyanide accident. Michael Faraday, who made important discoveries in the field of electromagnetics, suffered eye damage as a chemical explosion and spent the remainder of his life suffering from the results of chemical poisoning. Louis Slotin, who helped to design the first nuclear bomb, accidentally killed himself by dropping a sphere of beryllium, which ignited a fission reaction. Galileo spent the last 4 years of his life as a blind man due to staring into the sun. To be clear, intentionally changing the strength of a quantum wave can have equally disastrous effects on the experimenter. The phenomenon of exponential opposite probability, or blowback, is known within occult circles as the inevitable consequence of black magic. Many deluded followers within these circles become victims of their own black magic, or simply put, the uninformed meddling of the quantum wave function that drives the intended probability of their desired outcome to absolute zero along the path of least resistance. This probability reaction has no discretion regarding how violent that zero probability is. This means that tampering tampering with the quantum wave function is like handling a live wire. One must know and understand how it works. Energetic exchanges with the quantum wave function are zero-sum and seem to carry a charge, either positive or negative. If one uses manifesting to gain something, that means someone else has to lose something. Furthermore, as you learned in Physics 101, you know that like charges repel. Generally speaking, manifesting from the desires of one's own ego or individual conscious unit carries with it a possible repelling force if it must come into contact and conflict with the similar charge of another similar force in the zero-sum exchange. Manifesting from the ego and imposing one's will upon reality can have two pushing forces of probability, which have equal magnitudes, both exerted in opposite directions, which can result in a negative return of that probability sent out. In other words, whatever the intended probability that you're trying to create, that probability can also become zero in violent fashion as this zero probability reaction passes along the path of least resistance. Tampering with quantum waves is risky and dangerous business. Physicist Fred Alan Wolf with Bob Tobin in Space, Time, and Beyond toward an explanation of the unexplainable state. I think that thought does modify the strength of quantum wave functions. Now, the strength of a quantum wave is a measure of the probability of an event occurring. I believe that the greater the awareness or consciousness of the observer, the greater the probability of an event occurring. Watching the 1998 film Sphere will give you an abstract idea of what can actually happen. In the movie Sphere, the main characters begin to manifest their unconscious, deepest fears and nightmares.
You're manifesting your fears. Whose childhood fears were the jellyfish?
When you actually become aware of your ability to affect the probability field and start tampering with it, you will not only attract your dreams and your desires, but also your nightmares and most potent fears. And in the process, in the course of this, you'll very likely also dash your own dreams.
It is good to see what someone with real talent can do when great opportunities are given to them instead of me.
When you embark on this journey of manifesting, you may quickly discover that you've made a terrible mistake. When you find that concentrated methods of visualization coupled with rapid brainwave frequency decline influences the probability of real-world events in your life, both in a positive and negative manner, you will also quickly realize that playing with quantum waves is dangerous and comes with very high risk. The human brain operates on 6 main frequencies: gamma, beta, alpha, theta, delta, and infralow. These frequencies represent electrical activity in the brain in which groups of neurons fire and communicate with one another. These frequencies range from high to low, the highest being gamma brainwaves, 38 to 42 Hz, and the lowest being infralow, less than 5 Hz. Gamma represents an awake and alert state, and delta represents a more relaxed state and can be reached via meditation or light sleep. Brainwave frequency can alter the strength of quantum waves. Specifically, intentional rapid brainwave frequency decline coupled with awareness and visualization can affect the strength of quantum waves, which can alter the probability of events in space-time. Rapid brainwave frequency decline, or total brainwave frequency cessation, can be accomplished via certain activities. These activities were outlined by Aleister Crowley and other occultists and won't be discussed here for the extreme danger of these methods and the depraved nature of these activities. Think of your brain waves like you would an ocean. The waves must break first before any resistance dies down. With no resistance, you have access to meddle with the probability field. There are many methods to change the strength of quantum wave functions and alter the probability of events, but all methods have one common denominator: brainwave frequency. Visualization via daydreaming, sensory deprivation, etc. only affect the strength of quantum wave functions when and because brain frequency declines to 8 Hz or below. This means that the dominant brainwave frequency must decline rapidly to theta, delta, or below to affect the wave strength. This is a window whereby probability particles are affected. The closer to 0 Hz one is, the greater the likelihood of a change in the strength of the wave, and the greater the likelihood of altering the probability spectrum amplitude. Eric Hoffman, PhD brain researcher, with the use of an EEG and electrode placements, discovered a way to effectively cease nearly all electrical activity in certain regions of the brain for about 5 seconds. Aleister Crowley also used similar methods in his depraved practice. any activity that allows brain frequency to rapidly decline, such as intense exercise, daydreaming extremely close to the border of sleep, or even being frightened, can affect the quantum wave strength, or a measure of probability, if done intentionally with awareness. Any period of time in which brain frequency can reach close to 0 Hz while still in a conscious, wake state is a window in which consciousness can very easily change the wave function strength and alter the probability of an event in a positive or negative manner. The negative manner, or 0 probability, as mentioned, has colloquially become known as black magic, and this is often misunderstood. The quantum field of probabilities can be affected because electrical activity in the brain is virtually non-existent, and there is no resistance to changing the strength of quantum waves. During a dominant delta frequency, the probability charge can be created, which places a probability force into motion. Remember, all actions have a reaction, and quantum waves are no exception. One is creating an actual force and an action, which carries with it a possible reaction of negative probability or exponential opposite probability. We'll discuss this more later in the video. Intentionally changing the strength of a quantum wave by analogy is like creating a mini Big Bang, manifesting for yourself a whole new universe of probabilities. The closer the brain frequency is to 0 Hz, the least resistance there is in applying one's awareness, imagination, and will to influence probability. Simply put, one is merely trying to flatline an EEG as best one can with the knowledge that one can change reality for both the positive and negative outcomes. Whatever the energy is created places that energy into motion. All one has to do is desire one's imagined outcome or goal during any activity in which brainwaves are at a dominant gamma frequency, the frequency of highest concentration, which then drop down to 8 Hz or below, rapidly igniting a change in the strength of a quantum wave. The goal of occultists is to keep the brain frequency range as close as possible to 100 Hz in the gamma state for the longest duration possible while concentrating or imagining one's intended reality, followed by a rapid and steep drop in electrical brain activity. Actively applying visualization and being conscious of how imagination via altered frequencies changes probabilities will allow exponential efficacy and danger. To be clear, I don't advise anyone to do this. I'm outlining how manifesting actually works, so people know that manifesting does not affect probability in only one direction. When you really know how it works, it's much more likely to destroy your life than improve it. We'll discuss why more in depth later in the video. Once brain frequency drops down close to 0, one's intention likely then carries a charge of probability, which then puts a probability force into motion. Whatever one is imagining and wills to happen becomes an actual force and creates a probability reaction. One must also take a physical action towards the intended goal. After this, there's no turning back. If you've changed the quantum wave strength, the event probability will either go to 100% or 0%. And 0 probability outcomes can create disaster for yourself in relatively short amount of time and very easily, and are more common than 100% outcomes. Aleister Crowley, one of the most famous occultists of all time, who penetrated the highest levels of secret societies such as the Golden Dawn and the Freemasons, who was dubbed the most wicked man in the world and referred to himself as the Beast 666.
Who is this ghastly man?
Crowley wrote, and as Donald Michael Craig also notes, so even the most notorious occultists, not Christians, note, we all have 2 wills. They say that if you perform an act of magic, i.e. changing the strength of quantum waves without it being in harmony with your true will, or God's will, there will be a conflict between your lower self and your higher self, or your will and God's will. The higher self, or God's will, is that which is aligned with your true will. Such a conflict, both Crowley and Craig note, who are some of the highest, most notorious occultists to date, they say that this will reflect negatively back upon you, the person manifesting. Please do not underestimate the implications of what this means. This is immensely significant to understand. The occultists note that you can and will set up a potential conflict of what Crowley and Craig call the lower will and the higher will, which will reflect negatively back upon you, the practitioner, the one manifesting. In this example of conflict of wills, your will versus your higher will, or when your will goes against God's will when you're tampering with the wave function. One is simply driving the quantum wave strength, the probability of your intended event outcome, to absolute zero when it's not aligned with God's will or your higher will. How could you possibly know what is God's will for your life and what your higher will is when you're imposing your will upon the universe? You don't. And that's why it's so dangerous. Some rely on tarot cards to guide their manifesting decisions, but do you really want to put your own life and future in the hands of the outcome and advice of tarot cards? I wouldn't, personally. And I think that this is a black hole to hell that brings hell itself into your life, and you have to live with the consequences of this for your entire life.
Forever. Forever. Forever.
This zero probability outcome that you can encounter when there is a conflict of wills becomes a zero probability no matter how violent it has to be. Zero probability outcomes are inherently destructive and life-ruining, and makes changing the wave function strength not worth the endeavor. Quantum wave strength changes are caused by brainwave collapse activities, coupled with awareness and attention, which shift the probability of events on a scale from 0% to 100%. Manifesting does not simply move probability in one direction to 100% safely with no risks or complications, as many proclaim. Your desired outcome can also move to 0% probability and work against you if it is not God's will for your life. What is more, this 0% probability can draw upon the library of your greatest subconscious fears and worst nightmares. By drawing on the energies you've already put out into the universe, maybe this is God's way of punishing you for trying to usurp his power and his right. Even Manly P. Hall, who was not a Christian, but an occultist, states that all forms of phenomenalistic magic are but blind alleys, outgrowths of Atlantean sorcery, and those who forsake the straight path of philosophy to wander therein almost invariably fall victim to their own imprudence. Man, incapable of controlling his own appetites, is not equal to the task of governing the fiery and tempestuous elemental spirits. Many a magician has lost his life as a result of opening a way whereby submundane creatures could become active participants in his affairs. Franz Hartmann in The Dangers of Occultism notes that I have before my eyes a long list of friends and personal acquaintances who within the last few years have become victims of their own psychic researches, for which they were not yet ripe and in which they persisted in spite of all warnings. Some of them became insane, some incurably diseased, others obsessed and morally depraved, and not a few of them ended by suicide. They were not unintelligent or uneducated people. On the contrary, one of them was a great and well-known scientist and inventor, noble-minded and generous. Several were writers or poets of some distinction, and a few even public lecturers on theosophical subjects and on spiritualism. Things, however, of which they had very little personal experience, and of which they knew only from reading. The bottom line is that when manifesting goes wrong, like unintentionally harming another by violating even an unknown person's will, by challenging their God-given path, trying to take what God does not want you to take, one risks unintentionally destroying one's entire life with one single zero probability encounter, because they're inherently violent and destructive. And you have to live with this mistake for the rest of your life and all of the collateral damage that you cause in tampering with the probability field. Harming yourself is quite easy, and intentional brainwave activities can reflect negatively back upon you. Consequently, I strongly recommend that one avoids manifesting in all forms of reality manipulation and the occult. Aleister Crowley's motto was, "Do what thou will," and this is in direct contrast to Jesus Christ, who said, "Not my will be done, but thy will be done." And in manifesting, which is inherently and fundamentally a form of sorcery, by default, you are associating yourself with the devil. Whether you like it or not, whether you agree with it or not, you are.
I have the cataclysmic power to give you everything you've always dreamed of. I'm the devil.
Sorcery is forbidden in the Bible, and for good reason. Instead of forcing one's will upon the universe and trying to shift one's timeline, more importantly, it is better to be aware of how dangerous it is to tamper with quantum wave strengths. With each wave strength change, one is creating a small Big Bang, creating the opportunity for a whole new timeline via probability shift. Instead of forcing one's will upon the universe, it's much better and safer simply to take a step in any desired direction and open oneself up to the universe for God to assist you in that direction. Forcing one's will upon the universe can have many undesirable consequences, and it doesn't always turn out for the best. In contrast to imposing one's will, by totally surrendering to God's will, you open yourself up to beautiful synchronicities, God's true will for your life, and you take yourself out of harm's way. Manifesting will put you in harm's way. Dr. Fred Allen Wolf agrees with me and says that it is better to surrender to the true will or to God and not impose one's will. Dr. Wolf explains that the real secret is that you simply open the door, not force the universe to give to you, as that usually doesn't end up the best way for you. One simply surrenders and makes oneself available for one's desires to happen. For example, Dr. Wolf says that if it's your intention to make a lot of money, one should learn how to run a business and take steps in that direction. Therefore, Dr. Wolf states that instead of making the universe give to you, it's preferable to allow oneself to be open to what the universe is already giving to you. The Bible says that you must humble yourself and surrender to God. Jesus Christ is the divine prototype, and all of this manifesting is nothing but rebellion against God and trying to be God himself and play the role of God. So in essence, you're trying to steal from God.
You're tiny Jesus.
He was a man. He had a beard.
I like the baby version the best. Do you hear me?
If you're someone who's been involved in this dark art, you should genuinely repent and ask forgiveness. Prayer and requesting is much more optimal than risking even one zero probability event. You should run from manifesting in all forms of the occult as fast as you can before the demonic event horizon swallows you whole. It's not just science you're dealing with here, but real demonic powers of the ether that you're collaborating with. Hyperdimensional entities who also believe in self-will instead of over and above God's will. These demonic powers are what help you manifest. You're not manifesting within a vacuum. It does not profit the soul or the body to collaborate with demons. If you actually succeed in this manifesting, it eventually will come back to haunt you because it is not holy. It is not of God and is actually part of the rebellion against God. Satan is the father of self-will, and look what happened to him for trying to be God. Do you see the allegory here? This holds a message for us. Manifesting is not holy or humble, and if you actually get good at manifesting, God will eventually humble you, like he humbled Satan. And it's just not worth it to be humbled by the creator of the universe for fraternizing with demons. If you guys enjoyed this video and found it informative, please be sure to hit the like button. It's the most important thing in the algorithm to help push this video out so naive kids don't ruin their lives in manifesting in a cataclysm, thinking they can play God safely without the high risk of manifesting actual real-life nightmares. And if you're interested in the larger picture and the macro perspective of consciousness, and what happens to your consciousness after clinical death as reported in peer-reviewed medical journals, and the things many report that they encounter after clinical death, such as a light at the end of the tunnel and an overwhelming feeling of being home.
Why didn't you just go home? That's your home! Are you too good for your home? Answer me!
If you're interested in learning what's beyond that light at the end of the tunnel, and what happens after you die, then check out my near-death experience playlist at the bottom right-hand corner of your screen, which is also in a pinned comment below.
Is this what happens when you die?
This is what happens when you die. That is what happens when he dies.